Life will present you with people and circumstances to show you where you're not free.
Yeah,
Tell me about that. That's me paraphrasing you. So tell me about that.
absolutely. One of my favorites that came through me and one that gets recycled through the interwebs quite a lot. People obviously resonate with it and they enjoy it. So when that came to me, what I recognized, as is often the case or always the case with my work, I'm just noticing human behavior and I recognize these patterns and tendencies that we all have. And I tend to point out sometimes the, ridiculousness of these idiosyncrasies. And what I recognize, this dimension of being human to me was really about discovering true freedom, and that we all, not necessarily consciously, but curate a life that allows us to be confronted so that we can see where we're not free. So the quote really, unpacked speaks to that, which is, here we are, humans, misidentified with form, meaning this physical meat suit and our brain and the thoughts that get generated from it. And we get triggered by loved ones, colleagues, politics, whatever it is that's going on out there in the world. And that to me is, life presenting you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. And why is that powerful? Well, because as far as I'm concerned, our true essence, whether you call it soul, spirit, consciousness, or the absolute, it's one of its main inherent qualities is freedom. And so, as far as I'm concerned, without sounding too esoteric within less than 5 minutes of starting this conversation, we're here to break free from the constraints with which we arrived. And so, the actual paradigm of planet Earth is the perfect means by which we get to do that.
What are some ways you would say that people can discover true freedom? But also, two-part question. Can you give some examples? Do you think there are many people in the world who are going through their life and maybe they're having some challenges? I think like abundance in career or relationships are typically big ones for people.
Yeah.
What are some ways that people maybe don't even realize that they're not free? And what are ways that they can discover true freedom?
Great question. I mean, the short, maybe slightly flippant response is just live life. Because to, reference the quote you just shared of mine, life is going to reveal where you're not free. So, you're not going to get too much by just sitting on your couch and meditation. That's helpful. But the way that we really discover where we're not free and how to discover freedom, therefore, is to live life and see where you get triggered. Who upsets you, what situations piss you off, where do you feel you lose a sense of confidence or a sense of self-worth, where do you become anxious. All of the things that people experience on the daily is the means by which we get to see where we have still become misidentified with inadequacy, insecurity, or scarcity are the three main buckets. So the best way to discover freedom is to live life, but do it consciously, do it mindfully, do it from the perspective that I invite people to look at, which is to see not a means of escape from discomfort, right? Like a lot of people fill in the blank. It could be weed, alcohol, nicotine, food, sex, TV. People, the ways that people preoccupy themselves often these days are just methods of finding pleasure to escape pain or suffering.
Hmm.
So, a better way of discovering freedom would be go, okay, my spouse, my kids, my boss, they piss me off. Well, first of all, recognize they didn't piss you off. They did something or said something. You pissed you off. Now you're slightly empowered. You're not a victim of circumstance. You're a victim of your perspective of circumstance. So now it's putting the reins back in your hand. And instead of arguing, defending, sulking, manipulating, or whatever humans do when they're in these situations or finding some means of escape, ask yourself, what is it that is being triggered here? Like, what is it that they said that caused this emotional reaction? There's got to be something beneath that that doesn't allow me to just be with the circumstance unaffected. So that's the quickest way is live life, but do so in a conscious, mindful manner where you're recognizing the opportunity of triggers versus using this as an excuse to either berate someone, get pissed off, or have another cocktail. Go, hang on a minute. What is life trying to show me here?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, Now I had mentioned that like abundance is a big topic for people, and I think
Yeah,
relationships are a big topic for
for sure.
people.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a story of like your own grief and loss, getting out of a relationship, and like what you learned from that? Do you know the one I'm getting at?
For sure. I mean, that started my whole career. I mean, people ask me, how did you get to this place of complete freedom and peace? Well, my parents had died when I was young. My mum died of cancer when I was 7. My dad went to work when I was 17. He worked on the ferries that go between England and Belgium and England and France. And sadly, one capsized many years ago. And he was one of almost 200 people that sadly passed. And so he went to work. I was 17. I never saw him again. So, you wouldn't have to be a rocket scientist to recognize that those events created a fear of loss for me as a boy, as a
Mm.
kid, and I was an only child. So, my whole family suddenly got disintegrated. So when I was late 20s, 28, 29, I met someone. I was actually living in Australia, working as a trainer at the time for a couple of big actors, and we sort of fell in love and all the things that anyone can associate with romance. And she, after a year and a half, we got into a beautiful relationship, and then she left, and I sort of fell apart. And so during the course of my demise for 6, 7, 8 weeks, I was calling friends, how do I get her back, and all of the things. But I had these incessant questions going around in my head of, where is she? Where is she dating someone else? Will I see her again? Will I find love like that ever again? And it was keeping me up at night, sometimes quite literally. And I realized one day, not that I had the conscious awareness to do this, but the insight came to me that I got the answer to all the questions simultaneously. And it was, I don't know. I don't know where she is. I don't know if she's dating anyone. I don't know if I'll see her again. And I don't know if I'll find love like that. That was just simply the truth to those questions.
Hmm.
And so within relationships, what it showed me was the underlying, albeit unconscious, for which reason it inspires compassion, but the means by which I was trying to be the perfect boyfriend for her as a compensation for my own deeper fear of losing something of value, because that was the strategy my brain came up with after going through a lot of pain with my parents dying, right? That makes sense. Anyone can, in hindsight, go, oh, okay, I could see that a kid, his parents die. So then when he next falls in love and that person is perceived value, through my eyes, then I'm going to do everything I can to hold on to that person. And
Hmm.
so my behavior, albeit was the perfect boyfriend, kind, loving, generous, sweet, considerate, all the things, had an undercurrent of fear, which was self fulfilling, right? The self fulfilling prophecy, or as I tell people, fear will break its own heart. And so she left. So that was the catalyst for my quote unquote awakening that started my career. And as that relates to your question and other people in relationships, I really think relationships, particularly romantic ones, where we get sort of closer to people, so it's not superficial, you get beneath the skin of somebody, they're
Hmm.
really the greatest catalyst for awakening, because we become sufficiently vulnerable that, our traumas and our fears come to the surface. So the way that I look at relationships subsequent to that one is really the greatest means to both look at where I'm not free or where I still might have fears, but simultaneously to discover greater depths of love. And I think they're commensurate, meaning the more that anyone can overcome fears and concerns and limitations, the more they access love, and vice versa, right? So love being the antidote to fear and concern. So I think when people look at relationships as a means of sort of Hollywood, stories of "you complete me" and Jerry Maguire and stuff like that, and the quintessential romance of a relationship, they're sort of doomed to fail, right? But if you
Hmm.
understand the nature of what it is to relate to another being and to be a person of integrity, to commit fully, and men struggle with this more than women, but to really commit, relationships are incredible training ground for us to really see where we're hidden, where we don't have self worth, where we don't have self value, where we lack respect, um, and where maybe from our childhood, which is where all of this stems from, we thought we weren't good enough or we weren't wanted. And we've developed coping strategies. For a woman, often it's about being sexy or being subservient to, or being the people pleaser or the nurturer and taking care of someone as a means of garnering value. And for the man, it's often around performance, right? That his compensations for not being enough are, he has to be a porn star in the bedroom, he has to make millions of dollars, he has to drive the right car, all of that, right? So when we really strip back the fundamental underpinnings of a relationship, and really see it's an opportunity for our own spiritual growth and evolution, then if you do it right and you do it with someone who wants to do that with you, it's the most beautiful way of like really creating true affinity and energetic intimacy with a human being. You know, that to me is true love, right?
Hmm.
So that's my take on relationships, albeit, you know, somewhat shortened. As it relates to abundance, it's a sexy word and people throw it around, especially in spiritual circles.
Hmm.
But to me, true financial abundance has got nothing to do with money. You know, real abundance is a state of being. It's a way that we look at ourselves. It's a way that we recognize we are boundless, timeless, limitless beings. And as such, we have the capacity or the potentiality to create any life we want. So many people get misidentified with their bank account, their salary, their position, their title as the means by which they garner worth. But
Hmm.
then that's very slippery and it leaves them vulnerable because if they get fired or they get demoted or they lose money in the stock market, then their worth seemingly also diminishes. But it doesn't. Like someone's true value is consistent throughout life. You're a sovereign being. There's no other you. So your true value is inherent. What happens on the surface of your human life, you know, is just a byproduct of all of the energies that you occupy, the people you know, the choices you make, et cetera, right? But that's got nothing to do with true abundance. So I would invite your listeners to first of all make the distinction between material owning of stuff, you know, like
Hmm.
that's outside of you. That's got nothing to do with abundance. I've worked with, I don't know, 15 to 17 billionaires, and I wouldn't say any of them are abundant, right? They just have a lot of money. I mean, hopefully now they are after our work, but you know, true abundance is understanding your inherent nature. And when you live from that place energetically, then it tends to, not always, but it tends to manifest physically too. Whereas most people are doing it the other way around. They want to accumulate material worth to compensate for a lack of internal self worth.
Hmm.
And that's the cart before the horse. So it's a
Um,
lot, but hopefully that makes sense.
yeah, thank you for that. You mentioned abundance as being more related to our inherent nature. Can you
Yeah.
expand on that? What would you say is our inherent nature?
It's sort of a little bit of a catch 22 because I say, you know, trying to describe your true self is like trying to describe silence by talking about it. Um, so we exist before words. So whether you use the term spirit, soul, being, consciousness, as I said, our true nature, without sounding poetic, is divine. It's timeless. It's boundless. We are eternal. And so we are an aspect of life. Our nature is pure possibility, and that is abundance itself. So that's where, when people become misidentified with form, like, okay, you know, you're Jeff, I'm Peter, and we're this physical, you know, meat suit walking around, and you have whatever possessions and whatever money you have in the bank account, that's not you, right? That is a reflection of your this human incarnation right now. But it's not you as a being. Like, as a very simple, albeit maybe crass example, if I were to die in front of you right now, which, you know, be
Please
unfortunate time.
don't.
Yeah, please be unfortunate timing for the podcast. Where, you know, where did I go? Like everything that you would associate with Peter Crone, you know, the form of I would still be sitting here, my brain would still be in my skull if someone did an autopsy. So where the hell did Peter go? You didn't see me get up and leave, right? So that ineffable quality, the omnipresent energy that gives life to this sort of three-dimensional meat suit, that is the essence of who we are. And that's why I said you can't really describe it. It's almost like you get to it through a process of negation. It's like in Buddhism, they say neti neti, which is not this, not that, right? So I'm not this body. I can't be because I can, quote unquote, leave the body or I can change the body. Anything that can change can't be me. I'm the consistent awareness that is, you know, present throughout all the changes of my life. So, yeah, I guess it's that primordial question that has plagued people and philosophers for centuries of like, who am I? You know, and
Mm.
that's part of, I think, the beauty of the human experience is that we get to entertain that question and hopefully land on a fulfilling response or answer.
Yeah. So you also mentioned abundance being like a state of being.
Hmm.
What are some ways that people can tap into that state? Like some very practical things that people can do.
Sure. Well, the problem's in the question. So, and I love that because that's how people think is like, how can they tap into abundance? And for me, it's more appropriate to ask the question, how can I tap out of scarcity? Because you are abundance.
Yeah.
Subtle reframe, but very important, right? So if I am abundance, I don't need to tap into it. If I don't feel abundant, then I want to let go of or stop identifying with the ego and the human personality, which is based in scarcity.
Hmm.
So rather than trying to discover abundance, create abundance, it's recognizing where have I become attached to stories of lack, which we grow up around, right? People, how many times have a kid been told, well, money doesn't grow on trees, or money's the root of all evil, and we've got these narratives that get in sort of implanted into people's conscious as they grow up that actually become the impediment to really living from a place of abundance. So, great question, and I understand it, but I love to be accurate. So, you can't tap into abundance. You are abundance. The
Hmm.
opportunity is to let go of thinking that you are in any way scarce or coming from lack.
Fantastic. Also,
Different though, right?
yeah, we're also touching a lot on like your true nature. Your true nature is freedom, or your true nature is abundant, or your true nature cannot really be explained in words.
Yeah.
And it's all very like Zen. Like,
Yeah.
where did you learn this stuff? Do you have a Zen teacher, or can you tell me a little bit about your path, and like where's your knowledge coming from? Is it straight from the source, or where?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much a lot of life adversity. But I would say, we get information, we get inspiration, right? So information is like, okay, people are listening to this right now, and they might remember something I say or you say and use it as a form of information. We go to school, we learn, we sort of by rote repeat books, right? But that to me is not generative, that's reactive, right? You learn something, you remember it, and there you go. For me, my work has been very much sort of more channeled, it's intuitive, it's inspired, it's stuff that just occurred to me through, no conscious sort of um, direction of my own. It was just by witnessing and observing life and realizing, wow, when I come from this particular energy or this particular perspective, then I have certain outcomes. It's just physics, right? If I pick up this pen and it's got red ink in it, I'm not going to be surprised when I start writing in red, right? It's just the process of whatever's inside is being expressed outside. So, likewise with humans, if someone's walking around in an internal subconscious fear of I'm not enough, then the compensatory patterns of being a people pleaser or a perfectionist make sense. But it will also lead to a life that is unfulfilling, probably exhausting, and where they feel resigned about the fact that they're not living the life they want. So, that's where I recognized these patterns, and then my own intuition and inspiration was able to see, oh, these narratives and these dialogues, these constraints that people have, yes, they get stimulated or triggered in childhood, but I assert that we arrive with them. So then I get into much headier conversations of what is it to be human? What is this place, planet Earth? And to me, it is the paradigm for self liberation. It is the place for emancipating ourselves from these constraints that we all deal with. So that's how I got to my insights. And last I checked, they seem to be working pretty well because people keep coming to work with me or seek my counsel.
Yeah, yeah. I was really excited to have you on. So I am
Great.
one of those people who seeks out your knowledge. So
Great.
you talked about the purpose of coming here. Can you expand on like the purpose of being human? Is it to sort of discover where we limit ourselves and then
Yep.
release that and become free?
100%. I phrase it in my own ways, but it's sort of like the ultimate Houdini, like it's cosmic hide and seek, right? We, as souls, are boundless, timeless, limitless. For whatever reasons, through karma or life reincarnations here and there, we collect these feelings of inadequacy. I'm not enough. I'm not loved. I'm not wanted. And so we will curate from parents to events the circumstances we need to be able to trigger those fears and limitations so that then we can transcend them. So that to me is, again, just Peter Crone's perspective. I'm not saying this like carte blanche truth, but the way I see it is the dimension of being human is the opportunity to discover the soul that we are.
Beautiful. And a lot of your work is around kind of helping people to discover their subconscious patterns
Yeah.
and move past that. What are some ways? Can you share some ways with people? How can people start to recognize their own subconscious patterns?
For sure. I mean, the easiest way, as I said earlier, is live life and just see where you get triggered, right? So, triggered as a generalization is pointing to where do you get upset? Where do you get quiet? Where do you withdraw? Where do you get angry? Where do you lash out? Where do you blame? Where do you judge? Where do you accuse, right? So, anywhere where, in lay terms, you're being a victim of something, right?
Mm,
Like, so you call a buddy and they're angry. You're like, oh, well, what's going on? Well, my fucking boss is, da, da, da. You know, it's like, so right there, that's one way for that person to see, whereas they're a constraint. Because in that particular very simple example, if you're pissed off because your boss did or said something, there's a deeper narrative underneath the surface, which is something in the arena of, that person feels they're not respected, or they're not safe because the job might be in jeopardy. So then they don't understand their own capacity to be resourceful, or they don't understand their own worth. So the boss said, blah, 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 judge them for their work. It wasn't good enough or whatever. And their trigger is revealing their own internal dialogue about the circumstance, not the circumstance itself. So that's where in everyday life, the thing is, it's so normalized, right? That people just get upset. They have dysfunction in their relationships, particularly in romantic relationships where people fight and they argue and they react and they defend themselves. It's just like, well, that's just being in a relationship. Well, it is if you're unconscious, right? If you're
mm,
living from a conscious place, then you would look at, okay, why just because my partner, ex husband, this wife, spouse, fiance said something, why did I take that so personally? Why did I get upset? And then to look at that, and that's where sometimes you need someone who can reflect with you. It's not so easy to do it by yourself, but to be able to go, oh, they said, like a girlfriend might be like, oh, well, I'm going to go and meet Dave after work and have drinks. And the husband might be like, well, what the fuck? Like, are you seeing him? What's going on? Like, and have a big reaction, which
mhm.
is less to do with her. Like, she might be meeting Dave because she's trying to set up an opportunity for her husband, or who knows. But it's revealing that the husband is feeling insecure. And
Right.
that might be because when he was young, his first, girlfriend at junior high broke up with him and he found out she cheated. And so there's still a little bit of scar tissue there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
really,
what
that's the opportunity is just basically wherever you get upset about anything.
let's expand on that example. What is like a more healthy reaction for Dave to have? Like how would you counsel Dave through that? He's blowing up and going,
Well,
why the
Dave's the one she's going to meet in the
Oh,
example.
sorry, sorry. The
No, no,
the
no, I get it. The husband. Yeah,
the
yeah.
husband, the husband. He's freaking out about Dave.
Yeah.
What do you say to him?
So we would want to look at, first of all, what is the foundation of their relationship? How long have they been married? Has there been any incidents before? Have there been, certain moments of infidelity or jealousy from either side? And then for the husband to really step into his self love and self value would be like, hey, honey, um, I love you. You're my partner. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, but I just want to be vulnerable with you. Is that okay? And, if she's the right person for him and loving, she'd be like, of course, honey, what's going on? Well, I just want to say that I don't know why, but there's a part of me that's just scared that, you're meeting another man. And I don't know if it's jealousy or I'm worried that maybe you might be interested in him. And I know it's silly, but and then he might remember an event when he was younger and, my dad cheated on my mom, and I think it still sat with me. So there's an opportunity to actually create more intimacy in those circumstances
Yeah.
where you become vulnerable. So instead of just reacting, protecting yourself, or even a lot of people pretend they're okay when they're not.
Yeah.
So every opportunity in life, whenever you get upset, is really an invitation for greater connectivity and intimacy. Now, the only caveat there is we don't know, because if the wife can't hold space for him, then that's a bigger issue, right? Which is, okay, maybe there is a problem. Maybe she does have interest in Dave, and maybe there is a bit of a fragment in her marriage, and that's something that then needs to be discussed. But if I'm counseling the husband, that would be the approach, is like honor the little boy in you who's scared and be man enough to share it. And then if you're with the right person, they'll hold space and you can work through it, at which point you're not only becoming closer with your partner, but you're able to reconcile some of your own past hurt.
Yeah, and then you can grow from that, and there's that. It's almost like now your partner is holding that mirror for you, and
Yep.
you can grow as a human being or as a spiritual being.
Yep. And
But
as I said, it actually creates more intimacy because in that vulnerability, which I'm not saying is easy for anyone, particularly a man, it's actually true relating, right? One of my quotes, I say, most people are in a relationship, but not in relationship.
oh, okay.
Very subtle, right? But most people are in a relationship, but not in relationship. So what that means is they might be in a marriage, but they don't actually relate. So
What are can you expand on what it would mean? Like what true relating would mean?
just what I pointed to, which is to be completely exposed. It's almost like
Yeah.
there's no individual filter between you and your partner if that's someone you're committed to. Obviously, you don't toss pearls before swine, as they say in the Bible, right? Like, I'm not particularly religious, but I like to pull tenets. Like, you want to share yourself vulnerably in front of a crowd or a group or a person that cares about you, who's not going to mock you or use it to, diminish you. So, true relating is to be completely transparent, to be vulnerable, including the parts of you that are sometimes um, still unhealed. That's the most beautiful part, right? That's where relationships are the conduit, as I said earlier, the catalyst to reveal some of the deeper traumas that even we've become oblivious to. So, if you're in a good relationship that's healthy, then you should feel safe enough to share yourself, and vice versa, which is the conduit to relating. Like, I'm relating means to literally relate, which means to connect, which means to commune, to connect to the soul expression of namaste, right? The divine in me sees the divine in you. And then whatever's in the way of that because of our human conditioning, I can hold space and love for. That's relating. That's what a beautiful relationship looks like.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of like my mind is running on this example with the Dave and drinks
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Good old
A-
Dave.
And like, if the husband, let's say he doesn't express himself and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, oh, I'm just going to hold it in because, I don't want to rock the boat, or I'm such a nice boyfriend that I don't want to make a fight. Then
Yeah,
now he's in like a layer of inauthenticity, and he's
correct. Yeah,
not actually speaking his truth, and his partner subconsciously or consciously is probably going to pick up on that energy of the inauthenticity.
correct. And that will create a little bit more of a severing of the connection versus more intimacy in the connection by being vulnerable. And that's what people don't understand is they sometimes think that, biting their lip or suppressing their feelings is for the benefit of their partner. When in fact, if you're with a loving partner, it's quite the antithesis. It's actually cutting them out because what you're unconsciously saying is that person can't be trusted. And that doesn't feel good. If you're somebody who loves somebody, you want to be the person that they feel the most safe with. And if they're not sharing themselves, as you said, whether it's consciously or not, and for women, it might not be either, but they'll feel it, right? Women are very intuitive with their feelings.
Exactly.
They'll be like, oh, something's a little off here. Now, what does that mean? Maybe she comes back and she actually had a great chat with Dave and it was really well intended and it was actually to enhance, something with her husband's business, or she was trying to be proactive and surprise her husband with a business opportunity. Who knows? But she'll come home, and as sad as it is to say, the husband, like many men, might be sulking a little bit, right? Like little boys. And so he's withdrawn. She's in
Yeah.
a more euphoric state because she feels she's done something to contribute to the relationship, but her husband's not available, and that's confusing for her. So she might want to snuggle or even make love as they go to bed. And he's like, oh, honey, I'm just tired, which is another lie because actually underneath it, he's hurt and scared, which are the two predominant emotions that drive most human beings' behaviors. And it would lead to the next morning her maybe then starting to question, why am I going to these efforts to help my husband, right? And then, now you start the separation game, right? So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's every day.
See, I like that we took this example even further
Yeah.
because it's like if he doesn't say anything, now he's at home steeping in it. She's comes home happy, but he doesn't receive that, and then now
Yeah.
everyone's confused, and it's like a cascade of problems. Whereas if he had just been vulnerable and fearless and
Yeah.
authentic, then it's an opportunity to either ideally they would connect more deeply, but also now my mind is going to, well, if it's not a great connection, then she may be the one who gets upset and goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe you would say that about Dave. I was actually going to make a business opportunity for you, but now
Yeah.
forget the whole thing," and then they make a fight there.
Right. And then if that's her reaction, that's also telling, right? Because what that shows is her lack of capacity to hold space for her partner who's sharing a vulnerability. And this is why knowing how to communicate, especially in couples, is so important. But if that were her reaction, what she would actually be telling her partner consciously and unconsciously is, I'm not a safe space for you to speak into if she has that reaction. So then it creates the separation again, right? So either way, the sort of the punchline here is just be honest, because even if, let's say, she is having an affair with Dave, right? So just by virtue of the nature of human consciousness, I would like to assert that even if someone's lying and somebody is cheating and they're stealing, whether it's, post-it notes pads from their company or they're like sleeping with someone else and they're married, one of the interesting parts of the human psyche is we always know what we're up to, right?
Hmm.
Meaning you can lie to others, but you can't lie to yourself, right? Which is kind of a fascinating design of the human, brain and identity, which I think is beautiful because in this case, if the husband were to be vulnerable and say, "Hey, honey, I know this is maybe annoying and I don't want to come across as insecure, but it's really important to me that I'm super honest with you," he's giving her an opportunity to meet him there. And so if I'm her husband and I share that, she may, say, well, there's actually something I need to share because I'm in my own vulnerability inviting her to meet me there and
Hmm.
almost unconsciously saying, look, I want to create a safe space for both of us. So then she might say, you know what, I've been struggling with our marriage and actually I don't know how to say this, but I have developed feelings for Dave and I'm kind of embarrassed about it. Now it comes back to me, the man, the husband, to be big enough to go, okay, well, I really appreciate you sharing that because I've also wondered how we're doing because things haven't been great for a few months. So now actually in that, that's relating.
Yeah.
And if you're really coming from love, then I'm not saying it doesn't suck and it doesn't hurt. And maybe this, could be sad. And maybe even some of your listeners right now are in a very similar situation and they might be teary about it. But I, from the perspective of love, will always default to I want the person, whoever I might be with, to do what's right for them because that's what love does. Like I
Hmm.
wouldn't want her to stay with me if she's not happy. That's a lose lose, right? Like because she's not happy, and then I'm not going to be happy because she's not happy with me, right? That doesn't feel great either. So
Yeah.
I'd much rather have a vulnerable conversation that could lead to a slightly uncomfortable or grief filled, outcome, but nonetheless leads to a win-win situation eventually, right? It's like the old adage of people stay together because of the kids and they keep it this dysfunctional, disharmonious, sometimes hostile relationship because it's under the guise of, well, we don't want to break up the family for the kids, not realizing that the energetics that play out between mum and dad are way more detrimental to the kids under the same roof. So I'll always say kids would rather be from a broken home than in one.
Good
So
point.
so, likewise, in any relationship, if you feel as a listener right now that your relationship isn't firing on all cylinders, that you don't have passion, you don't have safety, then I'd much rather have a conversation about it and clear it up. And if it is right to move on, then go and find what you want with someone versus remain in the pretense of, well, I don't want to have awkward conversations. So I'm just going to go through the motions as though everything's okay. It's like,
Sure.
I mean, who are you kidding?
And you know what? Let's just play all sides of the example. Maybe it's an opportunity for an even deeper connection. And she goes, "Well, I was starting to get feelings for Dave, but now that we're talking about it, let's work on this." I don't know.
Correct.
Maybe the thing could be saved.
Oh no, I mean I've had that with so many people that I've worked as, both individuals in relationships or as couples where the man's willingness, we're using the husband as the initiator here, but it can go either way, to be vulnerable could be the the point of attraction for the wife that was missing in the relationship because she felt she couldn't connect. So even though she's developed feelings for Dave, which is fine, we're all going to be attracted to different humans through the course of our life.
Sure.
The point of attraction for her might be that Dave is just open with his feelings, and for a woman, that's a big turn on, right? That's almost the non-negotiable. And so in this hypothetical that we're talking about, the husband sharing himself might be the catalyst for her to revisit her relationship and her commitment to her husband and say, this is all I want from you. I feel terrible that I've started to develop emotional feelings. Nothing's happened. We haven't had an affair, but it just felt nice that I could share and he was willing to share. But I love you. I want to be with you. And if you're willing to do that, oh my gosh, there's no reason for me to go anywhere. And then he feels more inspired to share himself more readily because he gets the benefit of his partner not only holding space, but becoming closer to him and rewarding him for his transparency. So then that becomes a virtuous cycle versus a vicious cycle, which is what most people tend to get stuck in. So yeah, there's so many permutations of this particular example, but I'm glad that you can see them because that is real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, I'm feeling very uplifted by this particular example. I don't know why. I'm just like
Yeah,
anything's
I think they're going to make
possible.
it. I
Yeah,
think
they're gonna
I think
make it.
I think they're
Like
going to be okay.
for anyone out there listening, like you can make it too. Just
Yeah.
speak your truth and be vulnerable.
Yeah. And to that point of truth, I always say, again, it might sound a little overly philosophical, but I say, anyone's truth is everyone's truth. So what that means is if in this case, the wife said, "Look, I so appreciate it, that you've opened up and you've given me now permission to be vulnerable, and I just need to apologize because I do want to move on and I have feelings for Dave." Then if that is her truth, then even though the husband might be devastated, it is his truth. He might
Mhm.
not know and it might not be what he wants, but as an energetic being, as a soul in this incarnation, he might grieve for months. He may not want to date anyone for a year or two, but eventually it will all make sense. And that's where there's a much deeper sense of trust where we become more loving and less possessive, and that's a
Yeah.
very subtle distinction. But a lot of people collapse love with possession and
Mhm.
attachment, as opposed to, okay, if he really loves his wife and she says that she wants to move on and explore something with Dave, then true love wouldn't have an agenda. It wouldn't try to control her. I'm not saying many humans know how to get to that state, but it's an invitation to consider that's real love, right? Love doesn't want to manipulate or control someone. That's conditional, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just that's a little caveat there that even if things did go quote unquote sideways for the husband, they're not actually going sideways for him in the long run because it might take 6 months, 12, 2 years before he meets someone and go, holy shit, this is what I was looking for in a partner, was someone where I could be vulnerable, feel safe, and I know they're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Eventually someone's going to come along where it feels, "Oh, this is what I was looking for the whole time."
Correct. Yeah.
I'm reminded of this little saying or this example where they say like if you love a flower, you don't pick it out of the ground and jam it in your pocket and take it around
Hmm.
with you everywhere and say this is my flower and now it's in my pocket
Yeah.
because then it dies. You leave it and let it be watered and let the sun get it and
Yeah.
you know
Tend to it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old adage, you love someone, set them free. I mean, everyone's heard that expression, right? So love isn't binding. It's not, contractual. It doesn't have an agenda. It's not controlling. And it's not based on, as I said, possession. And through Hollywood and whatever experiences, so oftentimes love gets collapsed with that attachment. And that's the codependency relationships that so many people are driven by, which I understand and I have compassion for, but it just doesn't allow for much joy because you're not actually free.
If anyone is out there listening to this and they're relating to this example that we've been having so much fun with,
Yeah.
and they're thinking, I want it to be like that. But for some reason in the moment, maybe they still have trouble expressing themselves or speaking their truth or saying the hard thing or being vulnerable. What
Yeah.
can you give any tips for helping someone like that?
Sure. First of all, be okay. Like, don't, it's easy for us as human beings, especially from the perspective of the ego based in insecurity, scarcity, and inadequacy, to berate ourselves when we can't do something, as opposed to actually practice the energy of love, which we're looking for from another, but bring it to ourselves. Like, if you had a kid, a daughter or a son, and they were scared to do a class presentation or a performance, you as a parent would hold space to say, honey, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. There's a lot of people who get scared, even professionals now who get paid millions of dollars to be in movies. They get nervous. It's okay. So that's the first place to start is if you feel vulnerable having a conversation with anyone, family, friends, loved one, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to feel scared. Then once you make space for yourself, which is an expression of love, you want to ask yourself, what's the why behind this? What am I committed to? So even though I might feel scared to share, am I more committed to protecting myself and surviving, or am I more committed to connection?
Ah,
And not sharing is a commitment clearly to surviving and not looking bad or ruffling feathers, right? But if I'm committed to connection, then it becomes kind of nonsensical to hold on to anything.
yeah.
And last I checked, as it relates certainly to intimate relationships, everyone's really committed to connection. Like we as human beings, our primal sort of needs are, obviously food and shelter and safety, but otherwise belonging, right? We want to commune, we want to connect. We are all looking through the illusion of separation. And this is why love is such a big topic in movies and poems and songs and in everyday conversation, is because we want to connect. So it becomes quite self evident that, oh, hang on a minute, if there's something that's bothering me about myself, about my partner, that I'm not sharing, then if I'm not sharing it, what I'm saying is I'm committed to separation.
Mm, yeah.
And then it becomes like, as I said, it's like it's a no brainer, right? It's like, oh, well, duh. If I'm actually committed to intimacy, then and connection, then it's incumbent upon me to share.
Yeah. I like what you said about survival versus connection as well.
Yeah.
And commit to intimacy and connection.
Yeah. Intimacy to me, again, is misunderstood as usually something to do with sex or physicality. Intimacy to me, as true intimacy, is energetic. It's really being with another person fully in their reality. Um, Intimacy that is physical, that goes beyond that, is a wonderful expression of that. But if you don't have it energetically, then you're just doing mechanics, which is again why a lot of people are unfulfilled in their sex lives too, because it's pump action, which sadly for the women is usually very unsatisfying.
What what are some this is I've really had fun with this example that we really just ran.
Yeah, Dave's getting a lot of airtime.
Dave is getting a lot of airtime on this episode. What are some common things you run into though that you when you work with like a high end like high net worth or someone who's got a lot going on in their life? What are you running into? They want to make more money, they want to have better relationships. What are you helping people like that with?
Gosh, it runs the gamut. I think, as a catch-all, people want to be more free. They want to be more joyous. They want to have a greater sense of vitality and aliveness for life, regardless if I'm working with, an MLB all-star or an NBA player or an Olympian or a billionaire or a stay-at-home parent. It doesn't really matter. Most human beings want to be fully self-expressed. They want to feel alive and ideally want to feel that they're making some sort of impact. So, um, when I'm working, to use your example of someone who's a very successful high net worth individual, oftentimes what they're dealing with is stress because of whatever they've created. And oftentimes what they've created is compensatory, right? Like they've garnered a lot of external money as a means of overcoming a deeper feeling of inadequacy. And so, whilst it might look good on the surface, what we still want to address is what's driving this show. Like the need for more. Like, why does a billionaire need another billion? And again, that's fine. But if it's still coming from this sort of hungry ghost, insatiable addiction to overcoming the feeling of, you grew up in a house of poverty and you're never going to live like that again, well, you're never actually enjoying the trappings that you've created because you're being driven by this underlying constraint of inadequacy.
Mm,
So I really look at the underlying energetics of somebody's makeup as opposed to their life circumstance.
very cool. Well, I have found this episode very helpful.
Good.
I feel my mind opening to sort of mass possibilities.
Yeah. Well,
So
good.
I hope the listeners are getting that as well. As
Yeah.
we get close to the end, a couple of things.
Sure.
Is there anything that you would like to share that maybe I haven't touched on? And in addition to that, what are you up to now? Where can people find you? All that kind of stuff.
Great. Well, the answer addresses both because sharing and where can people find me would be synonymous. So, um, my Instagram is at Peter Crone, just my name. My website is petercrone.com, so it's very easy to find me. And one thing that I'm very passionate about sharing that speaks to what you just, kindly commented about feeling expanded and mind opened and feeling alive is I created a platform, a membership actually called Freedom because that is my main product. So I wanted to make all of my work super affordable. So we archived over 100 hours of courses and content, everything from how to free your mind to actual course on relationships, a course on how to end anxiety, a course on how to end depression, a course on what is real health, understanding Ayurveda, which is my healing modality for diet and lifestyle. Um, and so that's, very available to everyone at 29 bucks a month. So that's what I'm excited to share. And then if people want to go deeper, I do a 3-month mastermind too, which is teaching my methodologies and my work, and I coach people and I explain people. It's not a certification, but it's as close to if people want to go deeper, not only for themselves, but if they're a coach, a yoga teacher, a leader, a executive, or a parent, and they want to be able to help people that they care about, then I would invite them to look at the mastermind too.
Fantastic. And the mastermind, is that accessible on your website?
Yep, it's all there. We only do 2 a year because it's a much more intensive program. The Freedom platform is just, that's available ongoingly, monthly. But the mastermind we have one coming up, depending on when this airs, probably starting in August.
Mhm.
And there's 8 modules, there's over 30 hours. I lead it all. It's all live. We have a community, we have conference calls. It's incredible. Yeah, that's
Is
one of
it
my
it's live like in person?
sorry, live in terms of like I'm there. It's not
You-
recorded. Like Freedom is
Yeah.
all recorded programming.
Yeah.
It's actually on Zoom because we have people. I think we had 28 countries represented in the last one, like people all around the world. It's super satisfying, and you meet incredible people who are committed to breaking free from all their fears.
I love it. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, my friend.